Welcome back to another episode of Shout Esports. I'm Jess Brohard, and this week we're back on our segment that teaches you how to become an esports shoutcaster, host, or content creator. So in this episode, we'll talk about some essentials for traveling to esports events. We'll talk about event travel from a variety of perspectives. I primarily travel to events to work as talent hired directly by the company putting on the official broadcast. And in fact, I started writing this episode on the plane to the most recent Call of Duty League event, so very appropriate. But you might be hired by another company to provide coverage of the event for their websites or channels, or you might even be buying your own ticket to an event and hitting the show floor to network and film your own video coverage. Personally, I've worn all of these hats, so there will be something for everyone here. Let's start by talking about wardrobe. If you're hired for an official broadcast, you might have wardrobe as well as hair and makeup provided on site, but it's best to ask before assuming. If you're providing your own, consider the role and the venue. Will you be doing any coverage outdoors? How's the weather? Are you going to be casting at a desk or standing to do interviews? If you'll be walking around a show floor, you definitely want comfortable shoes, for instance. Plus, unless the camera's super far away, your shoes won't even be in the shot. On the other hand, if you're doing interviews on a stage, high heels can look really nice, as long as you have a backup pair of shoes for while you're walking around the venue. Be sure to also take into account the overall look you're going for. Some events will call for a more buttoned-up look, while others want a more relaxed streetwear vibe. Ask the producers and just use your best judgment. Once you arrive at an event, the best thing you can do is have a good attitude and be ready to roll with the punches. Something is inevitably going to go wrong and you'll have to adapt. And just as important, be on time. The producer will probably send out a call sheet the night before, and the easiest way to make a bad impression is to show up late, even if it's just for rehearsal. And speaking of rehearsal, there will almost always be some sort of run-through, tech check, or at least a meeting the day before the first day of the show. If you haven't worked with this particular production company before, this is where you'll be able to get to know the people you'll be working for, and also a good chance to familiarize yourself with the run of show and your role in the broadcast. Hopefully you've already had a chance to look at any information the producers have sent you, but sometimes these documents don't get finalized until the last minute. Once the event actually gets underway, you usually won't be going back and forth between your hotel and the venue too much, so be sure to bring a backpack or a large purse so you can bring all the essentials. Here's what I like to bring with me to the venue, a purse that's kind of like this because I can fit everything I need, which usually is a phone charger, a portable battery pack, a notebook and pens, hand sanitizer, makeup for touch-ups, a hoodie, and a couple protein bars because you never know what the food situation will be like. Now, if you have any food allergies or other dietary restrictions, try to let production staff know ahead of time so they can pass that info along to the catering staff. But often events are catered by the venue, so production unfortunately doesn't have a lot of control over the food. Catering will typically have vegan options, but they're usually not great. So most of that info will prepare you for what happens after you get hired for an event. So how do you get to that point? Well, I recommend going to events like PAX and E3 to create some content, and you can even look into applying for a media badge at these events. Ideally, you could even bring a friend and trade off operating the camera for each other while you film content. This gets you comfortable in front of the camera, can make for great content for a reel, and the biggest part, networking. You can stop by booths for games that you're interested in and ask someone working there if anyone in PR is available for an interview. Usually you'll want to try to set up these appointments in advance, but sometimes you can get lucky just by showing up and asking. At the very least, they might give you their contact info and then, boom, you just made a connection. Repeat that process over and over and you'll start to build your network of industry contacts. And while interviewing game devs and PR folks is great for networking, there's also this completely true notion that after you work all day on the show floor, the real work happens at the parties each night. Events like PAX and E3 are packed with industry parties that are rife with networking opportunities since a little social lubricant can make it easier to make connections. Sometimes it really is just as simple as walking up to a group of people and introducing yourself. But remember to be professional. It's easy to earn yourself a reputation for getting sloppy at the after parties. And keep in mind that you don't have to drink at all if you don't want to. Since I mentioned the networking you should be doing at these events and the parties, the final thing I'll talk about in this episode is business cards. I've heard some say that physical business cards will fall by the wayside soon in favor of simply exchanging Twitter info. But I still think business cards have some value. They're a tangible trail of who you met in person. You can even write small notes about what you talked about with each person, and they're a way to connect with someone who might not want to follow you back on Twitter. It kind of sounds harsh, but not everyone will hit you with a follow just because you met them, but you can still exchange cards and have a connection with them via email. But be sure not to just sling business cards at everyone and hope something sticks, and don't lead with your card. Try to approach and have a conversation with someone first, and then exchange cards so that you can continue the connection after the event is over. And be sure to put relevant contact info on your cards when designing them. I recommend including your name, title, email, Twitter handle or website, and even a picture of yourself if you're able. You probably don't need your phone number because most people will just use email or Twitter to contact you, and you never know when your card might fall into the wrong hands. Overall, the best way to network at events is to leave a good impression. You're going to meet a lot of people at events, and you're not going to be able to end up working with all of them, so just focus on a few genuine connections, be yourself, and keep an open mind. And if you have any other questions about events, travel, or networking, feel free to hit me up on social media at Jess Brohard. Or if you want to catch up on previous episodes of Shout Esports, where we lay the groundwork for how to get into esports as a host, caster, or content creator, check out the GameStop YouTube channel, where you can find a full playlist called Shout Esports. Other than that, I'll catch you next episode when we hop back over to our news segment. See ya then.